The most egregious thing they did is they did not eat the kids right away. And I like the kids. I thought they were great characters, but also I was like, come on.
Eat a kid?
Eat a kid, yeah. Hi, I'm Andy Farke. I'm the director at the Alf Museum, and I'm on the science faculty at the Webb Schools.
Hi, I'm Matt Wedel. I am an anatomist at Western University of Health Sciences, and most of my research is on dinosaurs.
And today we are reviewing Jurassic World: Rebirth. So honestly, I can't say I was that excited when I heard that there was another movie in the Jurassic franchise. They're cool movies. The original Jurassic Park was really influential on me when I was a kid. But it's like, it was starting to seem like how much creativity could they inject into the franchise? Did we really need another sequel? And so my reaction was kind of like, meh. How about you, Matt?
I guess I had heard that the movie was coming along, and I was sort of like, yeah, cool. There'll be, the one thing that the Jurassic franchise does is it brings interest to paleontology, and it keeps getting the next generation of future paleontologists on board. But I myself wasn't that excited about it until about February. I heard that Aquilops was going to be in the movie, and then I started paying a lot more attention.
Well, let's be real. Like, when I'm watching a Jurassic movie, the story is about third on my list of things I care about. I'm really there to see the dinosaurs. What do you think of the story on this one?
I liked it more than any of the Jurassic movies in a long time. And mostly it was because I'm much more interested in taking humans and putting them into a scary dinosaur environment instead of taking dinosaurs and putting them into a human environment. So this felt very much like a deliberate return to the franchise's roots, and that worked for me.
Oh yeah, I absolutely agree. I think the best moments, like you were saying, is when it's not just like, oh, here, look, it's a dinosaur in San Diego, it's a dinosaur in New York City. It's like, we are in this sort of prehistoric feeling world. It's strange. It's, we're the guests here in this environment. We're the interlopers. And I think, yeah, that's what really makes the best of the franchise for me. And I think the most exciting moments with the dinosaurs. And yeah, so I enjoyed that aspect of the plot. I mean, why they needed to go to the island, like, that seemed a little bit, well, okay, we need an excuse to go to the island and be amongst the dinosaurs. And we had that excuse. And I guess in terms of the plot points, that's really what seemed most interesting to me.
Yeah, they're definitely contriving a reason why these people need to get to the island to interact with the dinosaurs. And let's face it, most blockbusters have hand-wavy science if they have science at all. So I'm totally happy to forgive that.
Yeah.
Get me on the ground with the dinosaurs, because that's my dream. So I got to confess that I'm probably not very objective about this, because being on the ground with the dinosaurs is what I want to do, even if maybe I get eaten.
Yeah, yep, exactly. So for my part, the characters were like, I don't remember the names of most of the characters. Like, I remember the archetypes. It's like, oh, here's the the awesome, like, ex-military person. Oh, here's the mercenary. Here's the this. I think the one character that stands out was Henry Loomis, the paleontologist. No bias there on my part.
Yeah, there's the mercenary with the heart of gold. We knew that was going to happen. But Henry Loomis, if you ask, I think, most paleontologists who they, or maybe, I don't know how many of us would admit to this, but most of us want to be seen as Indiana Jones, or at least Alan Grant or Ellie Sattler. But most of us have a stripe of Ross Geller about a mile wide. And I thought that Henry Loomis, the character, there's a great balance between the capable person who's been on expeditions, knows how to pack a backpack and abseil and stuff like that, and the geek who will just go off on geeky stuff. A point where I laughed out loud is when Duncan, they're talking about how they would die, and Henry Loomis says, I'd like to die in a shallow sea and be buried by silt. Best chance of being turned into a fossil. And Duncan laughs out loud and says, you're such a weirdo. And I laughed out loud because I have had more than one of my paleontologist friends tell me that exact thing. And I was like, oh, this is so real.
Yeah. No, I think it's almost like a trope, how you can best maximize your chance of fossilization. Yeah, and I thought, for me, the way that he geeked out about the dinosaurs, the emotions that he showed, that felt real to me. It's like, oh yeah, like, if I was like standing underneath a sauropod, like, I'd probably, be a little bit of an emotional wreck. They're cool animals. So yeah, that felt really realistic. I did, I expected like, the loser boyfriend. I expected, like he wasn't going to last long. He had a cool character arc, I guess. I would have had him eaten in like the first 30 seconds, but I guess the Mosasaurs were slacking on the job that day. The rest of the characters were, I thought, interesting. It was cool to see how they engaged with the dinosaurs. The person you think is going to get eaten gets eaten, and the person you think has to survive, like, yeah, they survive. So they telegraph all of the stuff pretty well.
Yeah, I thought there was. I was pleasantly surprised to find a little bit more subtlety than I was expecting. Like the evil pharma guy turns out to be evil, but he has moments of likability. Mm-hmm. Nobody in the movie is purely good or purely bad. Yeah. They all have moments of when they're maybe not at their best, moments when they're showing a little bit more. And I think that's probably down to David Koepp coming back as the screenwriter. So, it was a Jurassic movie, but I thought it was just a little bit better than I was expecting.
Yeah, yeah.
I laughed when he started geeking out about the sauropods because I was watching like, that's Matt Wedel.
Yeah.
Oh, I was tearing up when Henry Loomis sees the sauropods. It's real dusty in here all of a sudden. Yeah. So a lot of times, people die in Jurassic movies, but it generally tends to be pretty quick and kind of, like old sort of 30s and 40s style where maybe you see a shadow of something happening. And here, multiple times, you just saw people getting carried off alive, still waving their arms. And I was like, oh my goodness, they're not kidifying this part. They're really putting the violence of the dinosaurs front and center.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that was definitely part of it. I'm glad, because there were a lot of points in the movie where it was like, oh yeah, this scene, that we also saw in the original Jurassic Park, and this one came from the Jurassic World, and sort of all those echoes of past scenes. I guess I'm kind of glad they didn't go back to like Lawyer getting eaten on the toilet. As cool as that scene was in the original movie, like it was nice to see a little creativity. I thought, when we saw the Spinosaurs, like I was really bummed, and this is a minor spoiler, like I was bummed when that character got eaten, but also it was like that was probably one of the coolest like predations in the whole movie, in the whole series.
When the Spinosaurus wakes up on the beach and goes into the water, and I read that they based its movements on a combination of alligator and grizzly bear, and you can see that. And I wish, as much as we got to see the Spinosaurus swimming around, and that was really cool, I would love to have seen them walking around a little bit more just because it's such a cool animal.
Yeah. But on the other hand, then we would have like 900 million posts on Reddit and various Jurassic forums about why this aspect of the Spinosaurus's like third cervical vertebra was inaccurate and that. So I think the more mysterious they leave the Spinosaurs, the better, probably, just for sake of all of our
collective sanity.
Collective sanity. Yeah.
As a paleontologist and somebody who has seen our knowledge about the lives of dinosaurs explode just within the span of my career, it was an odd choice to have dinosaurs restricted to this belt of tropical terrain around the equator, because we know that there were polar dinosaurs. There were dinosaurs totally decked out in feathers. We know that there were dinosaurs living at high latitudes, both north and south, and doing well in cold environments. So I was like, that's an interesting choice.
It was the frog DNA. It was the frog DNA that made them less cold tolerant.
Took off all their feathers, made them croak.
Yeah, yeah.
Steve Broussat made a point in an interview that he did that most big movies don't have a science advisor at all. Mm-hmm. And so the fact that the Jurassic movies, even though the science is a little loosey-goosey, that they have had a paleontological advisor for each one of the now 7 movies. And yeah, they don't always listen to them. The stuff that makes it to the screen isn't always, maybe as rigorous as we would like to see. That at least they're trying, or even if they're just paying lip service, that's more than, most space adventure movies don't have a NASA consultant. So on one hand, science was a little off. On the other hand, there was a decent amount of science that made it to the screen.
Yeah.
So.
And all we really care about are the dinosaurs.
Fact.
Yeah, I mean, I thought the whole plot point of, okay, we have to collect was it 3 Pokemon or whatever, and because samples of blood. It had to be fresh blood from like three animals, 3 dinosaurs as they call, only one of which was a dinosaur.
Exactly.
Putting on my helmet for that. that was, whatever. I mean, it got them to the island. That's all it really needed to do. Like the science behind that, why? Oh well. I didn't think about it too hard. I'm not there to think about the science of how they get to the island. It's more about these are the dinosaurs. I think the thing that I saw that was really interesting was looking at how the sausage gets made. Like as someone who works at a museum of Henry Loomis, like his museum, like it has no visitors. Nobody's interested in dinosaurs because I don't know why. And that was like as a scientist, like that was the really weird thing to me. That was like, well, that doesn't really make sense with how science works. And then the other thing I saw was like at his museum, like, was there any science actually going on? It looked like it was just like a gallery of really, really ugly skeletons. That was like the most scientifically unrealistic thing in the movie. And like no criticism of the people that do this, because I know like a lot of people work hard on this. But when you looked at the original Jurassic Park movie, they had like actual replicas of actual fossils that were there in that sauropod and that Tyrannosaur in those iconic scenes. And then you go to this, seventh movie in the franchise, and they have all these dinosaur skeletons in this exhibit. It's like none of those look like AI designed, like some 3-year-old, like their concept of what a dinosaur skeleton might look like. And that was probably for me, like, aside from all the other stuff about like, oh, we need dinosaur hemoglobin. It's like, wait, where are these even real skeletons? And maybe that's why his museum was failing, because like people figured out that, oh yeah, those are really bad, like, Temu knockoffs from, they paid 50 cents, a bone to put these things together. Maybe that's why the museum's failing.
Yeah, when they tilt up to show the Titanosaurus and skeleton, and the skull's clearly Camarasaurus, and it had about 5 too many neck vertebrae, and that's what I work on. So I was like, that's not a Titanosaur, nor are they built that way.
No.
And it is a strong contrast to the original Jurassic Park, where you had the mounted skeleton. They bought a Diplodocus skeleton. They bought a Tyrannosaurus skeleton. They put them up. Yes, those animals did interact outside of Jurassic Park. So I feel like the amount of actual science in the movies has stepped down a little bit with each iteration. But at least the Jurassic movies, we can have a conversation about the science on screen, which is not the case for most big summer blockbusters. I don't think anybody's talking about the physics of Superman or...
Yeah.
My bad.
The Mosasaur was a really interesting animal to me. I mean, I think the thing for me as a paleontologist was they just made it way, 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 way too big based on the fossils. I'm willing to suspend disbelief for a movie, though. It's like, okay, yeah, there's some quirk of this that allows mosasaurs to grow really big in this movie universe. I've heard like they didn't have the palatal teeth on it like they should. So I guess some choices in the design of the models. But as a movie monster, yeah, it was cool. I thought the behavior of them was super, super cool.
So agreed, the Mosasaur was way too big based on the fossils that we have. They got in some nice details with like the shape of the tail. And for me, it was resonant because I've been whale watching and I've seen a blue whale, and it goes on forever. It's one of those things that your eyes has a hard time believing. And so there's a point where the Mosasaur surfaced and, it was easily 100 feet long on the screen. And I was like, that's about what that feels like when you see an animal that big and your brain just kind of stops. I know that one of the rules that they were trying not to break is everything that they weren't retconning anything that happened in previous movies. Previous movies had established that they're 100-foot long mosasaurs, so fine, let's roll with it.
It's an unknown species.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Of dinosaur, apparently.
Of dinosaur, yeah. I loved the Spinosaurus way more than I thought I would. I think Spinosaurus is, no offense to any of the researchers that are working on it, like it's objectively a cool animal, and it is objectively like the most overrated dinosaur ever. Maybe even exceeding TRex. But I did not expect to love the Spinosaurs as much as I did, partly because you just hardly saw them. They were just like these shadowy things. You saw the sail. I liked how they gave the sail a little bit of character that matches what we know from the fossils now. I loved showing them in this aquatic amphibious behavior. I thought they were just really cool. And that was I would say for me, that was the surprise animal in the movie. I'm like, I didn't know, I expected not to like it. I went in not liking Spinosaurs, and I came out like, oh, like those were one of the coolest dinosaurs in this movie.
Absolutely. I felt exactly the same. I was a little eye-rolly because I was like, all right, Spinosaurus in Jurassic Park, stand by for DEF CON 5 online
Yep,
dino geekery.
it's gonna fight the D-Rex or the T-Rex or the Velociraptors or all of them all at once.
But they put in a lot of nice little touches. Like the one Spinosaurus had a little notch out of its sail where something had happened. They swam pretty fast, and I don't know if they were going out to sea that far that often, but elephants sometimes swim out of sight of land. Just because they're big animals, they go do what they want. So,
which is why 10 million years from now, someone's going to find a really nice elephant skeleton in deep water deposits.
that'll lead to all kinds of paleontological speculation.
Yeah, yep, exactly.
So yeah, I liked the Spinosaurus a lot more than I thought that I would. And I thought it was super interesting that they showed one getting up from a nap on the beach. So I think in all the previous history of dinosaur movies, we've never shown big predators sleeping.
Yeah, and we got it twice.
Movie, we got two.
Yeah.
So seeing the animals do animal stuff was kind of refreshing.
Yeah, yeah. And I think that was, for me, the high point of the movie is yes, there were the many moments where these were monsters, but there were also the many moments where we were just watching animal behavior. And I thought at times it was even like a grade or two above some of the quote unquote educational documentaries we've seen in terms of like, oh, this feels like a real animal. And I really, salute the, everyone involved in the movie for adding those few bits in there. Because I felt that really rounded it out and took it from being just a monster movie, which is, not a bad thing, to something that's like just a little bit more complex.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I think that all the big animals and small ones in the movie for me, they sort of fell on three places on sort of an emotional spectrum. There was the grandeur, which you definitely get with some of the big ones. There's a mix of grandeur and terror, which you get with some of them. And then there's a couple critters in the movie that were just only there for the terror aspect. And I thought it was interesting that those tended to be the made-up mutant things. And all the real critters, I felt like, got at least one moment. You're like, all right, that thing really lived on Earth. And we have its bones, and we can tell something about its life. That's pretty cool.
I loved the T-Rex in this movie. Like, it looked healthy, it looked real. Some of the anatomical tweaks they had made to it, I think, really brought it closer to how I envision the real world T-Rex looked. I just thought it was cool. Like, I was a little worn out on T-Rex, the whole Rexy from the past. No judgment on the nickname, but that made it hard for me to really like that animal. And it just looked emaciated. That old one looked emaciated and sick, and which I guess there's all the backstory of why that was. But yeah, I thought this one looked like a real animal.
Yeah, where the other Rexes, were designed back in the early 90s based on paleontology from the 1980s, and to us now they look emaciated, they look shrink wrapped. And so I like that they evolved the design a little bit. This one was really big, but it brought to mind the work that folks like Dave Hone and Mark Whitten have done, trying to speculate about what would be the max size of T-Rex. We're never going to find the biggest one that ever lived, but how big could they have gotten? This looked like a nice, healthy, max size T-Rex. Had a nice fat tail with big leg driving muscles. So I thought it was pretty cool.
Yeah, and the behavior on that animal is just really neat. Getting to see it sleep, to see it in the water. And it was, I think it was another one that I liked way better than I thought I would. And I think the character design was like the animal design across this particular installment, I thought was a notch or two above what we've seen in many of the previous ones.
Absolutely. And I really liked, and this is something that Darren Naish at Tetrapod Zoology has talked about, is a lot of times these dinosaurs in movies will just pursue prey without ceasing. Real animals eventually will give up in frustration. And that's what the Rex did.
Yeah.
He got his face scraped up on the rocks. You can see him kind of shake like a dog. He's like, all right, they're morsels. I'm out of here.
Yeah.
So I thought that was a nice touch too.
Don't see that every day.
So it's hard for me to be objective about the Titanosaurs because getting to see one of those animals in life has been a dream of mine since I started doing research almost 30 years ago. We don't know of any Titanosaurs that had whip tails that long, but there are Titanosaurs that have tail vertebrae that are stretching out and getting the ball on both ends. So we don't have great tails for all of them. It's not beyond the bounds of possibility. They were really big. I've been watching, as I've seen the movie more than once, I try to imagine when I stand next to a big mounted skeleton of a Brachiosaurus or Giraffatitan, if I reach up, I can just get my fingertips on its elbow. And so it's about 8 feet up. And so I'm using Henry Loomis. I think he's probably close to 6 feet. And I think that animal's elbow is about 18 feet off the ground. And so they're way bigger than anything that the fossil record suggests. But one of the things that I've gotten interested in my research in the past couple years is the idea that big sauropods are just hard to fossilize. We don't find very many of them. We never find them complete. A lot of the very biggest ones that we find were still growing based on unfused joints or bone histology. So I am predisposed by my native interests to give the Titanosaur a pass. I wish they had called it Argentinosaurus or Patagotitan or Sauroposeidon rather than Titanosaurus. But it was at least it was recognizably a Titanosaur, something from that clade, and not just a generic long neck. So what were your thoughts?
Yeah, I thought they looked so much better and so much more believable than the sauropods we've seen in previous versions. Was it the Apatosaurus that we saw, or whatever that animal was, in the opening scene of the movie where it's like in New York. It's like, it doesn't look good. Like, it looks like kind of a second-rate sauropod. And I thought the Titanosaurs they looked good. Maybe some of that could be chalked up to, these ones are healthier because they're in the wild. They're not having to hang out with a bunch of New Yorkers all day. But yeah, I thought they looked believable in a way that sort of the weird, they were almost like, balloon animals, the ones in the previous installments, at least in the Jurassic World movies. The Jurassic Park sauropods I thought were more believable, but the Jurassic World sauropods, I thought they looked kind of like balloon animals to me. Like, there was just no life to them. They just kind of had someone just chonked them out of clay or something like that. And I thought the Titanosaurs this time around looked good. Like, the heads looked more believable as sauropods. Again, I think the behavioral stuff they showed of them just out across this valley, it was really cool. It was really, really cool. So yeah, I liked the Titanosaurs. The size thing aside, I was always thinking if these animals are only 30 years old, how did they get to that size in that time, based on what we know about sauropod growth? And that was the thing for me, was when you see these massive sauropods, wait, these animals should be much older than 30 years. But maybe it was that frog DNA or whatever it was that they put in there, the secret sauce that whatever growth serum they gave them.
Maybe it was the high oxygen at the equator.
Yes,
that was an eye roller for me.
Yeah.
But it's a movie.
Yeah. Yeah, Kesslequatas or whatever it was, it was fine. It wasn't, I'm not a pterosaurologist, but I've been told that, what's shown of the skull and that does not match with Kesslequatas. Fine. Yeah, this is what happens when you get a dinosaur person to work on pterosaurs, I guess. Henry Loomis. I don't know what Henry Loomis's specialty was. Did we ever really hear? Was he a sauropod worker? Because that would explain the incompetence around pterosaurs.
First of all, thank you.
Yeah.
No, I don't think they ever say. And the Quetzalcoatlus was odd for me in a movie that made so many good choices, because actually the Quetzalcoatlus that was shown on screen in Jurassic World Dominion, although too big and way too aggressive against airplanes, at least had the crest in the right place based on the fossils that we have. So if they wanted to make up a big-edged archid, great, but it was odd to call it Ketz instead of calling it Hatzegopteryx or Arenborgiana. I mean, they're all equally unpronounceable to civilians.
Yeah.
So.
I mean, maybe it was the gene squeezers at InGen that were naming these things. We know how much gene squeezers know paleontology. Yeah.
But I liked that it was. I thought the behavior on that animal was interesting because it sees people messing around its nest. It does a flyby to check out. Then it lands. Then it sees people messing with the eggs, and it's like, oh no, you don't.
Yeah.
And then it was after them the way that an animal defending its nest would actually be. And so I was like, all right, this is a legit reason for an attack. This is not just a monster who's out to murder people for no reason. This is an animal defending its young, and animals will go to pretty great lengths to defend their young, including chasing people away. So I don't know if one would be able to move after it swallowed a person, but
Yeah, that was kind of cool.
it was pretty cool.
Yeah.
The mutant dinosaurs, the explanation in the movies is always, we had to cook up these mutants because people got bored of real dinosaurs. First of all, I don't think that would be true. People don't get bored of going to the zoo to see elephants. And second of all, it's always struck me as an odd thing to tell your audience people got bored of dinosaurs when each one of these movies makes about $1 billion makes about $1 billion because people are not bored of dinosaurs. So even if you thought that was true, it seems like maybe you would want to not shove that in the audience's face. My other thought was the movie would work equally as well if you replace the Mutodons with velociraptors, Utahraptors, but we'll call them velociraptors. And if you replace the D-Rex with a T-Rex, the whole plot could unfold just like it did. So there is definitely a big corporation that wants to force mutant dinosaurs on us, and it's not InGen, it's Universal. But my one, I think, saving grace here is that where the dinosaurs were shown as animals, the mutants were purely shown as monsters. At no point with the mutants do you get the sense that this is something that's supposed to elicit anything other than terror. So they made up some monsters, they put them on the screen. Jurassic Park movies are always kind of monster movies. I just think they could have done without them.
Yeah, it seemed unnecessary. I thought the Mutodon, the flying things, like those were the most interesting, I guess, of them. But yeah, it was so unnecessary. It reminded me of when I was a kid. I would sometimes draw, and I don't know if you ever did this, like draw the dinosaur picture of like combining all the parts of all the different dinosaurs. And that's really what the Mutodon felt like. It was like, oh, we're going to add a velociraptor this and a oviraptor that and a pterosaur this. And the only thing they were missing was like stegosaur plates and an ankylosaur tail, because I would always put those on mine because that like you need that for extra awesomeness. So yeah, I think the Mutodons were, whatever. I thought the D-Rex was just like, I don't know, maybe, I don't know what the D stands for, but it's not awesome by any means. And I won't say on the video, like, I'm like my headcanon for what it stood for. But it was just like the dumb Rex. It looked stupid. It looked like it was from like 3 franchises over. I don't know what franchise it was imported from, but it wasn't the Jurassic ones. And so it just like, we didn't need it. It wasn't scary to me in the way that like the Spinosaurs were scary or the T-Rex was scary. I mean, they tried to do it by having just like little glimpses of it before you get like most of a reveal. But it was just so, and maybe this is my paleontology brain, but it was just so unbelievable that it couldn't be scary to me.
One thing that I thought about just now while you were talking about D-Rex is that one of the reasons the Spinosaurs and the Tyrannosaurs are so terrifying is because we know that could actually happen. Like those animals existed on Earth. At least some of them, some of the time, were probably approximately as horrible as the ones we see on screen. And D-Rex is just another movie monster. It's a rancor, an alien combined with a predator, and a little bit of Godzilla thrown in. Fine. That to me is way less scary than knowing that if I encountered a Tyrannosaur, it could bite me in half without even trying.
Yeah.
So to me, the mutants are actually less. They're put in the movie to be scarier than the dinosaurs, but for me at least, the effect is they're less scary than the dinosaurs because it's just a movie monster.
Yeah. Yep. They were so unbelievable for me. I thought the Mutodon was like that was the most believable one, but the D-Rex was, I don't know, like it didn't click for me. It seemed like it came out of a different movie. It just was so different from some of the other stuff we've seen. And also I was thinking like just biologically, like, well, if something is that mutated and that much of an amalgamation of stuff, like how did it survive? Like what is its biology? And then also like, I mean, it surely was not a secret that InGen or whatever company were up to these sorts of things. So there surely must have been like a protest movement. Like there must have been a protest movement about bringing back dinosaurs. Like that was a thing. But then like doing those sorts of genetic splicings and creating those sorts of things that were probably like, we saw in the lab there, like all these failed experiments. I think from the scientific community, from the animal rights crew, from like all these different angles, like I can't imagine like how would that go forward without like that company coming on complete blast? Like who, aside from like executives at Universal Studios, would say like, oh yeah, it's a really good idea, guys, to make these sort of mutants because everyone's bored of other dinosaurs. that was like as I thought too much about the movie, you know, like you never think too much about a summer blockbuster. It was like, it just seemed weird. Like, how did that get that far? Like, where was there, I mean, I know they must have like bioethics advisors at this company that were saying like, oh yeah, it's a really good idea to do this, guys. After all of the really good ideas of everything else you've tried. So that was another kind of unbelievable thing for me about it. But yeah, it just seemed unnecessary. Like it was something, it was like a character design in search of a different movie.
I think that to an extent, putting the mutant dinosaurs in says that the folks that are making the movie don't believe in what they're doing. Like what sells these movies is dinosaurs. And for 4 movies now, they've been saying, oh, dinosaurs aren't good enough. We need to have something else in there. Really?
Yeah.
Pretty sure that the dinosaurs are good enough.
Yeah. On the other hand, though, I get like there's only so many ways you can have T-Rex fight Velociraptor or fight Spinosaurus. Like you got to mix it up a little bit, but I mean, there's already so many other plot beats that are lifted directly from other movies. You know, it's sort of the member berries kind of phenomenon with some of this stuff. So yeah, I don't know. On the mutated dinosaurs, like I didn't need them. They were fine, whatever. They added plot points, but it was the real dinosaurs that were the best for me.
Oh, I think probably for everybody. I think there's very few people out there who are like, oh yeah, Jurassic World Rebirth was awesome because of the mutants.
Yeah.
It was awesome because of the dinosaurs.
Yeah. My favorite dinosaur in that whole movie, like really, let's be realistic, the reason that I actually went to the theater to see the movie was our little baby Aquilops. Such an adorable animal, isn't it? I just want to snuggle with it, even though it'd probably like bite my finger off. Yeah, that was such a treat to see that animal in the movie. Even bigger treat to see all of the merchandising, which of course we are getting absolutely 0% of a cut from that. Not that I'm bitter at all. Hey, any of you execs out there watching this, if you want to like support the science and the scientists and the museums like ours and the Oklahoma Museum of Natural History that do this, send us like 0.5% of the residuals from the toys in the movie. Yeah, if you're bringing in $500 million, like we'll take 0.0003% of that for our work. But more seriously, like it was just cool to see that in there.
So we named Aquilops in 2014, and for 10 years there were no toys. And then when I saw the first announcement about, I think photos of this toy showed up online in maybe February or March, and I was like, oh my goodness, there's going to be toys. Is my dinosaur going to be on the screen? And going to the movie, sitting in the dark, I know Aquilops is coming. I had watched way too many trailers and clips online before I went to the premiere. And still, when Aquilops shows up on screen, I got a little misty-eyed. But on repeat viewings, what's been fun for me is to just sit quietly in the theater and listen to everybody else respond to Aquilops. And having like little kids and even grown-ups be like, oh, about our little dinosaur, very cool. And I thought they did a pretty good job of her movements, Dolores, the little Aquilops on screen, her movements looked pretty good. The reconstruction was plausible. Her skull was a little bit, had changed shape a bit, but then we think that the type skull is probably from a subadult, so it might have grown a little bit more. So yeah, I was pleased. Yeah,
it was fun. It was a really nice treat. I mean, thinking about all the people involved on that project, from Scott Madsen finding it to Rich Staffelli and Des Maxwell doing a lot of the original work on it, and then you, and then ultimately me being brought onto the project. Thinking about first all the science that went into that to understand the animal, to interpret it, to get the publication done, all the museum people behind the scenes at Oklahoma and at the Alf Museum and elsewhere, and then to have that all distilled down to like this animal that's now a movie star was incredibly cool. And the character design was, I thought, interesting and good, and like interesting in a good way. It's maybe not the exact same as I envisioned the animal in my own head, but like it was pretty good, really pretty good. And I guess we're not maybe the most unbiased people on this, but yeah, it was neat. It acted believable. Like, I mean, I don't know if Aquilops would be, no offense, but I don't know if it had enough brain capacity to really be that loyal to one human being. Maybe that's the frog DNA, getting worked in there again. That was the one thing where I was like, Okay, but it's also a movie, and it meant that our baby got more screen time. So I'm not going to complain too much.
Yeah, my initial thought was, ceratopsians made their way in the world by having sharp beaks, sharp teeth, and really strong jaw muscles. And maybe that's not something you'd want to plop into a backpack.
Yeah.
But then, as Xavier said in the movie, that may or may not be a terrible idea.
Yeah.
And at first, I was a little bit thrown that Dolores was not running away from them. And then I realized, oh, she's probably not 17 years old. She probably grew up on an island with no humans. And when you read stories about, dodos and seals and things on islands that hadn't been visited by humans, they have no fear. People would walk right up to them, usually with not such great results. And so when I thought about that, I was like, she was very inquisitive. She was very loyal. But, there's a big spectrum of personalities among animals. So nothing pulled me out of the movie. But like you said, I am hardly an objective observer here.
Yeah, and I think the other thing too is like it was very clearly Aquilops with that little bump on the nose. I mean, because there are a lot of those little ceratopsians that kind of look the same, and I know in the previous movies in that there was mention of like Microceratops or Microceratus or whatever we want to call it nowadays. And but to see like, oh yeah, this is very much Aquilops, based on the design of that little bump on the snout. Was pretty cool. Yeah, so it was fun. 10 of 10 would have our dinosaur in the movies again.
One thing that I thought is, Spinosaurus has been around for a long time because it was named in the first half of the 20th century, and so paleontologists have known about it forever. But Spinosaurus really took off as a pop culture phenomenon, I think, after its appearance in Jurassic Park 3, and so Aquilops has kind of flown under the radar in terms of toys and pop culture and things. And now it's been in the movie. And so I'm thinking, like, are we in a brave new world where 20 years from now, Aquilops is going to be as big of a deal as Spinosaurus? Probably not, because I don't think she gives fanboys enough to fight about.
Yeah.
But still, Aquilops is on the map now,
Yeah.
and I'll take it. And one of the reasons is because these movies do funnel public interest, which eventually translates to funding for at least for museum visitorship. And sometimes to scientific interest. Like, would we have had so much scientific interest in Spinosaurus in the past decade if it hadn't kind of gotten boosted by the movie? I don't know.
Yeah.
But if this leads people to say, hey, I'm going to go out to the Cloverleaf Formation or one of these other early Cretaceous formations and try to find more of these little guys that we know were here, that would be the best possible outcome.
Yeah, and I think beyond just the checking off like here's a new dinosaur, here's a new dinosaur, here's a new dinosaur. I always like to remind folks that it's not just about filling in details on these worlds that existed 105, 106, 110 million years ago, but it's all the questions that we didn't know to ask. Aquilops was evolving at a time when flowering plants are starting to take off. And so looking at animals like that, it makes us ask questions about, well, how do flowering plants fit into ecosystems? What happens when we have changes in our world today that affect how flowering plants exist and how animals interact with them? So I think not only is Aquilops cool as a way to like have that window into that Cretaceous world, but it's giving us all these other questions to ask that help us get better understanding about that world 100-some million years ago, and our world today, and what our world might be like in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's interesting to think about, we all know ceratopsians, the big ones for the horns and the frills and all the cool headgear, but really, to me, the continual through line in ceratopsian evolution is the jaw mechanics and the efficient processing of food. And it's really cool to me that even in the late Cretaceous, alongside Triceratops, you have animals like Leptoceratops that, if you stand back 20 feet, they're not that different from Aquilops. So that mode of being a little, possibly two-legger, four-legger, hornless biting machine, that was a successful strategy for like 40 million years. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, more successful than us so far.
So far.
Yeah.
In Jurassic World canon, did they discover Aquilops first and bring it back to life, or did you guys describe it and then somehow they found it later?
So I have my headcanon on how this works. So there were huge headlines in the Jurassic World universe when the paper by Farke et al. Was published because it was the first definitive example of an animal that had been identified and resurrected genetically and then announced in the fossil record. Because if we think like this animal was found, resurrected 30 years ago, like in the 90s at some point, and Aquilops was discovered, Scott found the skull in 1997, and then it was named in 2014. So we got extra big headlines and lots of excitement and just like more grant funding than we knew what to do with because of that link to the genetic discoveries that were made by InGen.
Yeah, it would be sort of like a reverse Dawn redwood, where it was named from fossils and then the living tree was discovered. In this case, the animal would have been resurrected. People have been like, what do we call this thing?
Yeah.
And then presumably in the movie universe, we came along and fixed that problem.
Yeah.
I like the idea that there would be big headlines about Aquilops in the dinosaur, in the Jurassic
Oh,
World.
absolutely, absolutely. And I think we would get some corporate sponsorship then. We're looking at you, Universal.
So I had this thought, which is very few people in history have lived to see their dinosaurs make it to the big screen. You could count them on probably two hands. The team that named Dreadnoughtus, Angela Milner for Baryonyx, a few others. And so for us to get to go see our critter on the screen and see other people react to it, that's a real privilege. Not very many people who've ever lived have had that. And then I started making a list because I'm a geek. And I realized Nasutoceratops is on screen in Jurassic World Dominion. You were on the team that named Nasutoceratops. Unless I miscounted, I think you're the only person in history who has seen two of their dinosaurs make it to the big screen.
Yeah, I guess that's right. Yeah,
while they're still alive.
Yep.
So congratulations, sir.
I'm really waiting to reel in that revenue from my cuts of each of those dinosaurs.
I hope you're patient.
Yeah, it's going to take a few decades. Yeah. The most egregious thing they did is they did not eat the kids right away. And I like the kids. I thought they were great characters, but also I was like, come on.
Eat a kid?
Eat a kid, yeah.
I mean, the Jurassic World franchise has broken the rules. Like, the dog never dies in movies. They've shown a Tyrannosaur eating a dog.
Yep.
So that would have been really boundary pushing. The most egregious thing for me is that they didn't vet some of Henry Loomis's dialogue with their scientific advisor.
Yeah.
Like, they had a scientific advisor, and then they have Henry Loomis describing Quetzalcoatlus as an avian. When it's not a general term for things that flies, it means specifically a bird. When he refers to Mosasaurus as a dinosaur, stuff like that, I'm like, come on, folks. He's supposed to be a professional paleontologist. Other than that, the character is probably the best and most recognizable representation of a professional paleontologist we've seen on the big screen. All respect to Alan Grant. But just some of the dumb things that they had him say, I was like, oh, come on, folks. Do better.
I think he's just messing with his colleagues, though. Because like I totally do that. Like I'll refer to like, saying like pterodactyl is my favorite flying dinosaur. So in my head, like he's just messing with people.
I think that, I like that's in my head canon now.
Yeah.
Probably my favorite thing in the movie, and this is revealing my biases as a sauropod worker, was they made the moment of, obviously they're echoing the moment with the Brachiosaurus in the original Jurassic Park, but still taking the time. These movies tend to run at kind of a breakneck pace. And the fact that they took the time to show Henry Loomis having an emotional reaction to getting to see a big dinosaur up close and getting to touch it, because, and I know this is banging on my door specifically because I've had that dream now for 30 years. And it has moved me to tears more than once thinking about the fact that I'm never going to get to see these animals alive. So that, they took the time to do that, and his acting there, Jonathan Bailey's, I thought was just incredible. So that, for me, that's it.
Yeah, I think I would say that's my favorite too. It was just like the one where I could put myself in his head, and just the visual spectacle of it, and yeah, it just worked really well.
And it was nice seeing the other characters too. It was a moment of awe for him personally, for personal reasons. But everybody else at that time, all the other characters are like, whoa, you don't ever see that. And they're, standing there, slack jaws, mouths agape, taking it all in. I think any of us would be if we ran into an animal the size of a building.
Yeah.
So.
Overall, I think I liked this movie more than I thought I would. My expectations for the franchise are relatively low. Nothing can stop, can top the original Jurassic Park in my mind. Like that's on its own level. But it was a fun movie to watch in the theater. It zipped by so quickly. It really just had great, I thought the pacing overall was really great. The visual spectacle was awesome. The plot was there to move things forward. But it was a really enjoyable movie for me. Like, it was a solid summer popcorn flick.
Yeah, I feel like with these Jurassic franchise movies, you kind of know what you're getting. Would I love to see one written and directed, at Oscar level? Sure, that'd be great. Do I have realistic expectations for that? Not so much. But I thought it was cool that, they brought a new look and some new behavior to Spinosaurus that tracks what we've learned in the past few years, more than any had in the past. They updated the Tyrannosaur. They're putting in new critters like Aquilops. And so, yes, there's stuff I can quibble about with the science, but there was at least science in the movie. And that's the most accurate Spinosaurus we've seen on screen to date. That's the most accurate T-Rex we've seen on screen to date, both in terms of their anatomy and also in terms of their behavior. And so that they got that much, that I, as a professional zoologist and paleontologist, can be praising the look and the behavior of the dinosaurs in what is basically a big summer popcorn movie, that I got to give them some credit for that.
Yeah, and I think it was also nice that they just hit the reboot button on the characters. Like, new characters, new movie, and it was kind of nice because I could go in without having expectations or this way or that way. It's like, okay, yeah, let's just throw in new people, see how they react.
You're getting a little Chris Pratted out?
Yeah, a lot of things out. Yeah. Yeah, my final rating for Jurassic World Rebirth, I would say as an overall movie, 6 out of 10. The fact that it had Aquilops and some really awesome Spinosaurs and sauropods, that gives it like a 9.8 out of 10.
I'm going to start at 10 and take a point off for the mutants, a point off for some dialogue that was pointlessly bad from Henry Loomis, like some facts that were just wrong. Like, they could have fixed that easily. And it was a little predictable, a little repetitive, but on the other hand, it's a Jurassic movie. So objectively, 7 out of 10. But because I got to see giant sauropods and Aquilops, you went 9.8? I'm going to go 9.81. Thanks for your time. Thanks for letting us talk about some of our favorite critters. And I hope if you saw the movie that it gave you some stuff to think about and increased your interest in the real story of these amazing animals.
Yeah. Thank you again so much for hanging out with us, for geeking out over this. It's a fun movie to talk about. And if you want to learn more, you can come visit the Alf Museum on site, or you can subscribe to our YouTube channel.